Playing games often makes me aware of time, of the ticking clock that I don't have. Am I making the most of this time? Is this even a good use of time? Have I made enough tangible progress to justify the time spent doing this over the things that I probably should be doing? And no type of game does this more than puzzle games. How long should it take to solve this puzzle? Am I taking too long to solve this puzzle? If I have to pause to think, it's too hard. If I solve it without spiralling into a pit of morbid self-analysis, it's too easy. Enjoying your hobbies versus imposter syndrome, manifested as fears of intellectual inadequacy. Our first competitor there usually goes down in the first round. Despite the low-level anguish they often cause, I like puzzle games, and I'm always drawn to them. Why do I keep putting myself through them? There's probably a very short, uninteresting essay in the answer to that, the cliff notes being to prove that I'm smart, to have some calling card to point to where my education falls short. Give me a puzzle game that allows me to project myself into an entirely different time, place, and persona, and I'm likely to be all in. And so, we head back in time. We rewind the clock, and then let it tick forward again. Ireland, 1897. The Ireland of peat bogs and poor roads. The Ireland at the end of a century shaped by the Acts of Union, by rule from another parliament. An Ireland shaped by Charles Stuart Parnell and his movement rejecting that, by the affair that brought about his political downfall, and by the failure of that rebellion. This is the Ireland that Friel wrote about. This is the Ireland that Joyce lived through. The game we're talking about today takes place in this world, and is a game that uses time to its advantage. It puts us back in time, to a world before everything was known, before the events of the game could be explained or dismissed. It casts time as an ally, something we work with. It casts time as a resource, something we can use. It casts time as a monster, constantly bearing down on us, something used to cover up things people would rather not be uncovered. The first line in the game is this: I'll waste no time, as there's none for wasting. Hi, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Dialogue Tree. This is episode 28. Time flies. The Séance of Blake Manor. The Séance of Blake Manor is a detective mystery game set over Samhain, or Halloween, in 1897. You are Detective Declan Ward. You receive a letter from an unknown sender, headed by that line about time, flattering your skills, reputation, and your wallet, and imploring that you put those skills to use in a mystery unfolding in a hotel on the west coast of Ireland. This is the mystery of a young woman, Evelyn Dean. She had travelled to this hotel, along with various other mystics and interested parties, to take part in a séance on the night when the veil between worlds is at its thinnest, the night of October 31st. She's gone missing. No one knows anything. At least, that's what they say. You travel through the wet, muddy coastal evening by horse and cart. You disembark and look up at this strikingly realised, grandiose, isolated hotel, framed by cliff and lit by storm. This is Blake Manor. You walk inside and meet the manager, a Mr. Varley, a stoic, unshakable man of stern disposition and a pair of glasses that obscure his eyes. You talk. He's not hostile, but at the same time is not especially forthcoming with information. Your interaction with Mr. Varley is a self-contained little sequence that functions as the tutorial for the game, as you are introduced to the multiple ways in which you interact with characters and spaces, and the dialogue and actions you need to undertake in order to solve the game's various challenges, be that a routine piece of deduction through observation, or how to not be found in a place in which you shouldn't be found. This interaction with Mr. Varley is all it takes. I'm in. The Séance of Blake Manor was developed by Spooky Doorway, who have form in the mystery genre, having previously released 2 well-received dark detective games in 2017 and 2021 respectively. It was published by Raw Fury, whose name is also on the credits for several, again, well-received games, including Goner, Bad North, Sable, Mr. Sun's Hatbox, and something called Blue Prince. The professional reviews for The Séance of Blake Manor are few, but glowing. At the time of writing, it sits at 89 on Metacritic and an eye-catching 94 on OpenCritic. There's a 5 out of 5 from Keith Stewart at The Guardian, an 87 from Kenny Brunskill at PC Gamer, a 9 out of 10 from Jill Grote at The Indie Informer. Oscar Taylor Kent's 4.5 out of 5 review for Games Radar includes this neat summation of it, quote, "The Séance of Blake Manor is the kind of mystery that makes you want to believe, and a reminder that gaming can be truly magic." End quote. Magic is a well-chosen operative here. Blake Manor is set in a world of magic, a world of folklore. It is shaped, but not defined by this. Narrative design and lead writer Dave McCabe elaborates on this in a developer interview. He says that the myths and folk stories present in this game do not add more mystery, but are there as flavour, to add better mystery. I can see what he means. The flavour here, the better mystery, is the atmosphere. Foreboding, with a constant sense of something ominous off screen drawing ever closer. A constant, nagging sense of dread. The Séance of Blake Manor is pure folk horror.
I could a tale unfold, whose lightest word would harrow up thy soul, freeze thy young blood.
This is a genre shaped by tradition, superstition, and rural paganism, but only truly defined by modern visual arts, starting with the cinema of the 1970s. Those influences are upheld proudly in this game. I walk into that hotel and I'm an outsider entering into a world of knowing glances and unknown horrors. I am Edward Woodward in The Wicker Man. My knowledge of the genre is basic, so I looked into it a little. I'd always assumed that The Wicker Man, released in 1973, was the big bang moment of folk horror, but the genre has roots in TV that predate even that. As per Adam Scoville at the BFI, though initially defined by cinematic canon, folk horror's strongest examples are arguably found in British television from the 1960s and early 70s. Shows such as The Owl Service, Beast, and Children of the Stones were all built around manifesting a sense of dread, where long-established communities display a deep and ingrained sense of menace and hostility towards outsiders. I looked up some clips of these shows. Of course, they seem dated now, but you can't deny the vision and the influence. The Owl Service, with its discordant opening title music and story of young people in rural settings dealing with some haunted plates, features themes of obsession and possession. Children of the Stones is an even better example, with themes more closely aligned with the pagan concerns of the most high-profile entries in the genre. There is a small village, there is a stone circle, there is the curious Little England of the past. There is a wailing opening theme song, a dead body, and more possession. Now, this show was broadcast in a time slot where it could be watched by children. an appropriately insidious decision seemingly intended to ensure an entire generation was warped by the influence of folk horror and took it forward into their own lives. In 2012, Stuart Lee produced a documentary for Radio 4 titled Happy Days, all about the spectacular weirdness of this show. And my personal touchstone for this genre are the early films of Ben Wheatley. And so, when I walk into Blake Manor, I am one of the poor, doomed schmucks of sightseers or a field in England. Accordingly, a sense of dread builds. Something is coming, and I have no idea what. And so, to the game. It looks like a comic book. 2D sprites in 3D environments, accented by thick, black outlines. It reminds me of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but in terms of the gaming world, it looks like Blue Manchu's Void Bastards. The colour palette, made up of varying shades of deep blues and mahogany, feels suitably rich for this moneyed environment. What you're looking at is equally nicely rendered. The personalities and types of the vast cast of characters conveyed through their expressions and clothing without straying into caricature. The dressings of the hotel are what you'd expect from a psychological horror game. Paintings of isolated buildings that may be pretty in another context. Here, they are lonely, foreboding. There are portraits of previous occupants, with no visible eyes. The sound creeps up on you. Some discordant tones, some fractured piano. No screeches of violin, no jump scares. The game is better for it. The sound design is subtle, felt only when it needs to be. The voice acting is welcome and effective, even if not every line is voiced. The characters are distinct and authentic. You could close your eyes and know who you are talking to. That is to say, the types of these characters are strongly drawn, again, without being hokey. How the mystery plays out, how you interact with Blake Manor, is the question that needs to be asked in determining whether this is a world for you. This has less in common with its more immediate forebear, the Blue Prince, and is more in line with games focused on observation, information gathering and deduction. In that way, you can see the influence of Return of the Obra Dinn in the richly drawn period design, and in certain mechanical touches, the case of the Golden Idol. We're going to take a short break to listen to some music, and when we come back, we'll look at those mechanics. In the Séance of Blake Manor, you are investigating the disappearance of a young woman at a hotel in the days leading up to a grand séance. You have until the start of that séance to solve the mystery. If you don't, well, it's safe to say that it is in the interests of both yourself and the guests that you do so. This investigation, the game, is built around the gathering of information and building up a picture of events based on that information. You build that information through observation of the environment and through conversations with the 17 guests, 5 staff, and 2 residents of the hotel. For example, you step out of your carriage and into the courtyard of Blake Manor. You observe something at the water fountain. This triggers an alert that a point of interest has been added to your investigation notes. You proceed inside to the front desk and meet with the manager. You have the options to observe or talk. You choose observe and note certain things about his manner and appearance, each added as a further point of interest to his profile in your investigation notes. You speak to him, with other points of concern being added to this dossier. The web starts to spiral. This introduction also showcases the hook of this game: time. Every interaction costs. Not money, not XP, not HP, not whatever, but time. Investigating a chest of drawers, reading a surreptitiously taken letter, talking to a guest. Each action costs at least a minute. Some cost more. Broadly, this matters, as the game is counting down towards its main deadline, the Séance. In the micro, there are more immediate deadlines imposed throughout the game. You must achieve X before 9 AM, you must achieve Y before this character moves to this location. The Séance of Blake Manor asks that you manage your time, and allows you to shape your own investigation, your own story, by what is important to you, or what you think is important to Detective Ward. You cannot investigate everything. You don't have the time. Your experience of the game will be unique to other players of it. Bespoke gaming experiences are nothing new, but this does feel like a new way of achieving that. How the game handled this information was what interested me. Can a mystery game convey an engaging, multi-layered story in a way that is authentically complex, whilst remaining readable? When you consider the bare facts of how the game expands, it's a valid concern. From the central spoke of our investigation spin off multiple other investigations. A mystery game needs to be able to keep track of this, recording the information, pushing you towards what's important without spoiling the thrill of the chase, whilst hopefully affording you some mechanical concessions. Now, this is achieved in a couple of ways. Detective Ward draws links for us, connecting entries in his notebook through his internal dialogue. And there is his detective vision, a mode triggered by a click of the right stick that activates an overlay similar to what Rocksteady did in the Arkham games. But what we also have on our side is the dense, intuitive UI. Everything you interact with in Blake Manor has a home somewhere within the pause menu. This is divided up into 4 sections: mysteries, records, timetable, and map. Mysteries is where you'll be spending most of your time, where the game lives. In the centre of this screen is the central mystery, the culprit. Click this to be presented with a list of every member of the cast, with top-level notes displayed about them, if you highlight them. On the left of the screen is a list of known facts about the culprit, filled out as you intuit them. Click any one of the list of character portraits to be taken to another spoke diagram, detailing the totality of your interaction with them, what you asked them, what they said, what you deduced from that, and what tasks and questions you have coming out of that. So that's 1. Further mysteries are added to this screen, all spiralling off from that central spoke. 1, for example, is Miss Dean's bedroom. Again, you click into that mystery to open up the associated mind map. Every mystery has this, and this is how you sort, review, and process a majority of the information you acquire. This is where you go to work out where to go. Records is where you review every item or document you have found, each description including a useful legend of who you can discuss the item with. The timetable is an interesting one. During play, you can build a picture of guests' whereabouts through fair means or foul. They may be in the dining room at 9 AM or the hedge maze at 2 PM. This can aid you in multiple ways. Need to find someone to talk to them? You can. Need to investigate someone in more underhanded ways and want to ensure that they are not around for you to do so? You can. All of this amounts to a dense web of information for you to handle, but the clear and precise UI should be credited here. Each connection is logical, and determining what your next step should be is a largely seamless operation. Seeing the mystery's mind map fill out is one of the joys of Blake Manor. What I thought would be overwhelming is actually enticing. Seeing spoke upon spoke extending off of your current subject simply filled my mind with possibility rather than fear. Your mileage may vary with this, as there are so many avenues for investigation, with only so much time in which to do so, and it's worth acknowledging that that level of openness may easily be off-putting for some. In the game's defence, it never suggests that you should attempt to engage with everything, so just know that if you're weighing up whether to play this. And how you fill out this mind map is the joy of Blake Manor. Exploring the manor itself is simply just good. There are puzzles hidden in plain sight, clues you can stumble upon, and it generally nails the vaguely illicit thrill of openish, self-governed exploration. It's an obvious reference, but it reminded me of exploring the Greenbrier household in Gone Home. Environmental storytelling, sometimes subtle, sometimes pointed, finding normal things in abnormal places. The other way you fill out the map, for me, is the highlight. Conversing and interviewing the guests of the hotel is always interesting and always oddly tense. Largely it rewards for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. Each interaction prompts a new course of investigation, a new possibility, a new excuse to explore and question elsewhere. And it rewards through the pull of that tension. Are you going to ask the right questions? Are you going to get the most value for the minutes that you spend on this conversation? These conversations are where the game's set pieces, its version of a boss fight, live. Investigate an individual enough, either directly or indirectly, and you are afforded the opportunity to form a hypothesis. In play, this demonstrates the influence of Golden Idol. You piece together a sentence from keywords you have discovered, form the hypothesis, then hit the dramatically rendered confront button with an enjoyably goofy Phoenix Wright adjacent exclamation mark to challenge the guest. How this plays out depends upon the quality and validity of the information you acquired and presented, something entirely dependent on the quality and validity of your investigation to that point, a persistent in-game assessment of how well you are managing your time. This confrontation may resolve whatever mystery is at hand, or it might not. There are consequences either way. This type of gameplay is plainly not for everyone. In theory, it's not for me. There's no dash button, and I can't wall jump in this game. But I'm fully invested in this world, and that's simply because of the world. I was surprised, probably wrongly, by how quickly it introduces its supernatural side, but otherwise, I found the varying strands compelling and intriguing. Investigating the history of the hotel, pulling on the threads of local folktales, discerning the sigil puzzles, and then finding them elsewhere in the environment. Blake Manor is a physically confined, isolated, theoretically small space, rendered gargantuan by the richness and expansiveness of the story, and that ever-present ticking clock. That, along with the diversity of the guests, are my favourite parts of the game. The framing device of the Séance is a clever way of allowing the writers to bring together characters of varying backgrounds. I like how each character profile is a brief description of that individual, including their class, their standing in society. It's evocative of a time when that truly mattered to people, and speaks to the writer's respect for the period they are detailing. That time, as covered earlier, was defined by the start-off and rebellion against the steady, insidious erasure of the cultural identity of Ireland. The mere presence of upper-class English characters is a cold reminder of this, and unpicking what this means for the guests of Blake Manor is another tease pulling you along, another thread for you to pull on. The Séance of Blake Manor is an enticing, absorbing mystery, strikingly presented, with a deep and knotty story presented and recorded in a unique and memorable way. It's a horror game, whose horror manifests itself in a way that means it lingers long beyond the spooky season. It has its moments of visual scares, sure, but it unsettles at a more fundamental level, in accordance with its folk horror influence. You can never shake off the unnerving feeling of being an outsider in a quietly hostile world. You can never shake off the feeling of being watched. This game enters into the lineage of folk horror fittingly, quietly, subtly, outside of the mainstream. Something to seep imperceptibly into culture, like Children of the Stones, through the young minds that engage with it. Those who do will absorb its most unnerving horror, the passing of time, and the realization that it's passing you by, quicker than you think. Thanks for listening. In the episode description, you can find a link to the show notes, which will include everything referenced in the show today. The artwork for Dialogue Tree was designed by Pixel Benny, and you can find the show online at dialoguetree.cc. Talk to you next time.